Hello, this is David from CarDoc Cornwall in Penryn, Cornwall. I hope you enjoy my video. This is the original damage on the vehicle. The door is bent quite badly and the frame is, so it was really unsavable. The new door came directly from Ford and was already prepared in primer, so I basically just had to give it a really good clean to get it ready to accept the paint. Once it's cleaned, then the masking paper is applied, and what I'm doing is applying it underneath the door that you can see there. That's actually the inside of the door pointing upwards, because if you look inside the door of your car you'll find it's painted the same colour as the outside, and that was the first thing I needed to do. Now the panel's clean, I can apply the base coat or colour coat. This is a water-based paint, and so it dries with air and a little bit of heat. The first coat on is a tack coat, really just to give something for the later coats to attach to. Once that's dried off with the air using those large dryers, I apply a heavier coat of paint to make sure that I get good coverage over the primer and that the panel is going to look good. Again, the dryers go back on, and then the final coat once it's dry is called a drop coat. This is the effect coat, which ensures that any metallic or pearl content in the paint sits properly, reflects the light properly, and blends, looks like the original paintwork. Again, that's all dried and we're ready for the last coat, which is the clear coat or lacquer. The first coat of lacquer is a sort of medium coat, just to give something for the heavier next coat to grip to. That's left to flash off for about 10 minutes just to air dry a little bit, and then you can see that I am going a bit slower on this one to get the final coat on, because I can't do any polishing in this area. It's too difficult to get to, so I need to make sure that there's a good deep gloss on that lacquer. And once that's all dried off, we then get on to the preparation of the other side of the door. As you can see, the door's been turned over, the lacquer's nice and dry. New masking's been applied underneath to protect the inside of the door this time. And what I'm spraying on now is a 2K primer. This is a two-part primer which chemically cures under infrared lamps or even in air. And it is a very, very thick primer, so it goes on heavily, and it's almost like spraying on filler. The beauty of it is that it means that I can get a very, very flat finish when sanding. So I'll start off sanding with 320 grit paper on the sanding machine, and that makes sure that I can check that it's level. You notice it's going light grey. This is very handy because you can see if there are any low parts in the paint. Once I've done the 320 grit, I then move on to 400 grit. Yet more cleaning, just to make sure that the surface is ready for the paint. In fact, you can never do enough. One or two areas went through with the sanding, so I'm just covering those up just to make sure there's no break in the paint film. And then once I've done that, a bit more cleaning, why not? But once all that cleaner has evaporated, as you can see quite quickly there, I'm ready to remove the masking, because the painting won't take place until the door's on the car. There's a temporary support under the door while I attach the hinges. Make sure that everything's screwed in temporarily just to get the lock before I do the alignment and so on. And I'm also sorting out some of the electrics for the door locks and the window mechanism and so on. Checking the alignment of the door, and you'll see that I'm just looking to see that the gaps are all straight. The next step is to put all the interior bits back in. I've got to put the window rubbers in and make sure the window winder works correctly. So that's the seals about to go in. There's some trim on these cars as well, just to get in the way of everything. It's actually quite an awkward one to do, but eventually I get the glass in and get everything lined up, and hopefully everything will be working, which of course it did. I'm just checking around the other side of the door to make sure I've got everything in correctly in the right place, that nothing's turned around the wrong direction on the seals, for example. And then the final bits and pieces going together, and there's the internal door panel going on. They can be really awkward sometimes. Finally being screwed into place, all the caps knocked back into place, and the trims all looking as it should. The next step, of course, is to move the car into the spray booth. I'm removing the trims, decorative trims, to make sure that I'm not going to get any nasty paint edges showing up, and sanding the adjoining panels with 1000 grit and a cleaner, and then wiping down, making sure that all of the edges are properly prepared. If you don't do that, the paint won't stick, simple as that. So that's the inside of the doors and so on. Now that everything's prepared, I can start the masking. Tape going around those areas that I don't want to get any paint on. And this job I actually enjoy. A lot of people don't like it, but I do enjoy masking. So I like to do it properly so that I don't open any opportunities to have problems when taking the masking off, that the paint comes off with it. It's very important to get everything tucked in properly into the inside of the doors. I'm actually going to mask up the front door independently so it can be opened, because I need to get paint into the inner edge of that rear door. So you'll see me opening and shutting the front door while I'm doing the spraying, and that's really what I'm doing, just getting that inner edge covered. Paper goes in all round. I like to make sure that because the gun's blowing air with paint, it can get everywhere. And so I like to make sure that inside the doors there's no risk of paint contamination inside the car. That's why I put the paper inside those doors like that. Here's the paper going around the wheel well to make sure no dirt blows up from there. The next step should have been that you could see me doing the outside of the car. Unfortunately, I didn't press the record button, so you've seen this instantaneous addition of plastic film and around the door and so on. So sorry about that. What I'm doing now is putting some temporary masking around just the rear door, because I want to get paint on there first of all without getting it on the other surfaces, because they're of course already painted. So get a couple of coats of paint on. There's the dryer going on, another coat of paint onto the door, inside of the door done there, another coat, slightly heavier coat there going on, and then I can remove the temporary masking. And what I'll do now is that as I'm painting the rear door, I'll blend the paint outwards towards the front door and towards the rear quarter panel, and that makes sure that there's a nice paint blend between the new paint and the old paint, and it'll be completely invisible. You won't be able to see it. Everything's cleaned up repeatedly, and then we do more painting. There's the paint going on, and I'll do a final drop coat on that as well, which ensures that all of the flakes sit correctly. As I say, this will be a completely undetectable paint finish, and that's a drop coat going on. So just you see the gun's quite a distance from the panel. It goes on quite dry there, but it does enable the particles to reflect the light correctly. Final drying, and then the next step is to get on to the lacquering. Okay, so we dust the area down to make sure there's no particles flying around, give the panel a wipe down, give myself a dust down, and then we're going to be ready for the first coat of lacquer. I'm using a DeVilbiss GTI Pro gun, quite a big gun, 1.2 needle, which gives a lovely fan there. You can see the fan. The first coat is a sort of medium coat. You can see it's quite a bit of shine to it, but if you look close you'd see it was quite dry. Second coat, I'm going a lot slower there, and that's really laying the lacquer on in a way that it's going to flow and look just right, nice and shiny, and not dissimilar to the manufacturer's finish. There was a little bit there that I needed to go over just to make sure, and I'm having a really good check. And then onto the quarter panel, just where I'm working there, That's where I'm fading out the lacquer into the top of it around the door, and that will be a completely invisible fade, you won't be able to see it. And now it goes under the infrared lamps for about 30 minutes while to cure it. Now the lacquer's dry enough, I can sand it with 1500 grit, which basically takes off some of the peel that you get in lacquers nowadays. If you look at your car, you'll find that the surface of the car has got quite a textured finish. What I'm trying to do is to match the texture of the new lacquer to the old, so it makes the repair undetectable. This doesn't always work first time, so I had to go over it all again just to make sure that it looked right. The polishing process is the hardest part of the job. It is tiring because those machines are heavy and it seems to be never ending, but to get the right finish you have to do it properly. There's just no shortcuts to it. So here I am polishing with a denim pad, which I quite like, quite aggressive, and but it does help with getting the orange peel right to match the existing. That's the next stage, is the polishing up with a finer compound, which removes the scratches from the earlier compound, which is quite aggressive, and then also gives it a lovely final finish that, particularly on a black car, is what you need. It's completely scratch free and really does have a depth of shine. Going around polishing now, starting to remove the masking paper from inside the doors. There it's all coming off. And then I can start putting the trim on. Of course in this case it didn't want to go on, I had to take the mirror off in order to get the trim in. Not something that I planned to do, and it added 20 minutes to the job. Then door handles are going to go on, the rear trims and so on, and basically put the car back together, but I found that some trim wasn't fitting properly on the rear. I had to take the window out and refit everything. My fault entirely, but again another half an hour lost. Then a final rub down with a microfibre cloth to polish up the finish, and put the door handles back on. Sometimes these door handles can be a pain. They can be a problem getting out, and a problem getting back in, but it's worthwhile because it does make sure you get the right finish on the panel. Sorry about the wobbly camera, getting it off the stand there so you can have a nice close-up inspection of the job, and I'm very pleased with it. It's come out looking good, the finish is right, there's no dust particles in there, no runs or sags or anything like that. Those gums are just beautiful, I love the De Vilbiss gums, and I'm sure the customer's going to be delighted with the job. So we moved the car out into the workshop, a bit different light there so I can have a really good look. And I found that there were a couple of little areas that just needed a bit tidying up with a bit more polishing. Took the opportunity to polish up around the roof edge and so on, because there were some marks in there that didn't belong, and make sure that the car was ready for the customer. I like to hand the car back looking as good as possible, so there's some foam applied, snow foam, which cleans the surface very nicely without abrading it. Then a hose down, and then I finally apply a light wax in the water, just so the car really shines when the customer comes to collect it. And a job well done.